Bob, it is always absolutely awesome to see you, spend time with you. Thank you so much for making the time. How is everything with you, Bob, and your family? Bring me up to date.
All good. My son, who will be 40 years old in May,
No, that is
oh
not true.
yes,
I'm sorry.
oh
That
yeah,
cannot be true. That
yeah.
cannot
And
be true. I remember
I
him as
was
a
just,
teenager. That cannot be true.
I was just having a conversation with a producer at NBC who does the NBA stuff, and I'm back there for cameo appearances on the NBA and MLB, and in the 28 LA Olympics, I'll be a contributor. And we were reminiscing about how Keith, when he was a little kid, the NBA Finals always came just after school ended. So from the time that he was 6, 7 years old, he's on the road with me as my roommate during the NBA Finals. And Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, they all knew him. They all knew him by name. And that was when he was 7, 8 years old. I remember him sitting on Dr. J's lap in Seattle in 1996 at the finals between the then Sonics and the Bulls, sitting on Dr. J's lap watching the game. And now he's about to be 40. Time flies.
It is wild. So, what is he doing right now?
He is a producer at the Major League Baseball Network, and they farm a lot of stuff out. This past season, it's moved back from Roku to Peacock, but he produced all those Roku MLB games on Sundays, and he also produced the World Series for the BBC. And now he's going to do the WBC in a few days for the MLB Network. And my daughter, who is 36 years old, was married last year to a terrific guy. They're a split household. She grew up in St. Louis, so she's a Cardinal fan. He grew up in Southern California. He's a Dodger fan, and heaven forbid if they should ever meet in the Division Series or the LCS. But as long as there isn't that much at stake, they're more than happy to live that way.
Well, it's good to hear all that. And they'll jump off that bridge when they get there, if they actually do get there. So, Bob,
Correct.
we got to get caught up. So, recently we saw you on the court at the NBA All-Star Game, introducing the network's coverage of the game. After spending nearly 4 decades with NBC, what does it feel like to be home?
It feels so great, and they've done everything right. There's no need to rehash it. We got sideways with each other after 40 years. It happens. But in the big picture, it was so rewarding for all of us, executives, producers, myself, and other broadcasters. And no one was there during that era as long as I was, or involved in as many different things, some of them outside sports. The late night show that I did, and I contributed a lot of stuff to NBC News and was on with, Carson and Conan and Leno and Letterman and all that stuff. So I was kind of a fixture there. And it was very rewarding for me personally and professionally. And then we got sideways. And I think both parties kind of lost sight of what we should have done. And there should have been, if I was going to leave, a more gracious ending. And now Rick Cordella, who's running NBC Sports, and Greg Hughes, who's in charge of publicity there, or press relations, they reached out to me actually 2 years ago and said, let's make this right, but let's wait until all the ducks are in a row. They thought they had a good shot at the NBA, and they got it. They thought they had kind of a shot at baseball, and they're surprised that they did get it. And they knew that they had the 28 LA Olympics, which I could contribute something to, a domestic Olympics that makes sense. So this gives me a chance to hit some grace notes and tie the proper ribbon around it and feel good about a closing chapter. And nothing I do will supersede or overshadow anyone else. Everything I do wouldn't be happening at all if I wasn't there. So I've done a few of the narrative openings that people liked in the 90s for NBA games. And I brought a few games, including this past Sunday's Celtics-Lakers on the air and the All-Star game, as you mentioned. And I'll be an occasional host of their Sunday night baseball package in the first year, this season, 2026. All stuff that makes sense, not too much heavy lifting. As I've said to some people at this point, I'm a show pony. I'm not a workhorse. The workhorse of NBC Sports is Mike Tirico. I have passed the baton to him, just as Jim McKay metaphorically passed it to me, and I'm happy to be the middleman in a string that involves 3 pretty good broadcasters.
Beautifully said, Bob. Beautifully said. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a perfect storm. It's set up beautifully. It's set up beautifully. All the ducks were in a row. At this
Yeah.
chapter of your life, given the exceptional career you've had, were you looking to do something interesting, or was this just so unique and too good to pass up? Like, what were you looking for, if anything at all?
Yeah. I wasn't looking for anything other than NBC. That's what would have been appropriate. When I first left NBC, HBO reached out to me, and I did a show that we were proud of, It was a very good show, and it fit with the general standard of HBO Sports. But then HBO Sports went away. And it's interesting to me that no one who covers sports media has picked up on this. They treated them all like they were one-offs, but all at once, Real Sports went away, their documentary unit went away, Bomani Jones' show went away, and mine went away. So had that not happened, it would have still made sense for me to do that kind of show, a half dozen times a year. Again, no heavy lifting, but all of it good quality when you do it. But apart from that, I don't think anything at this point would have brought me back except this opportunity to write a gratifying last chapter where it should be written with NBC.
Exactly. We all want that. So, Bob, when you think about, you mentioned Michael Jordan. So when NBC got the NBA package in 1990, the network certainly did benefit from the star power of Michael Jordan because he was a cultural phenomenon. He was somebody who transcended the sport, right? What do you make of today's stars in the NBA and their level of connection with casual fans?
I think it's going to improve, and this may sound self-serving, but remember, I'm not really front and center on the NBA coverage. I think that the NBA and MLB have realized that even with a changed media landscape, it's important to have a presence on classic broadcast TV. This may sound like a detour here, but when people ask me about the difference between Jordan and LeBron, I always say that you can make an objective statistical case for LeBron. I don't know if I'd agree with it, but he's certainly great. But you can't make any case that he had the impact that Jordan did. Now, part of that is because Jordan was with one team and didn't hop around, and that team won 6 titles, 2 three-peats, and he also won in the NCAA with North Carolina and had the winning shot against Georgetown, and he was also the central figure of the first Dream Team. You've got all that. And also, no disrespect to LeBron or anyone else, Michael Jordan had leading man charisma. So there's all of that. But another part of it was that Michael Jordan's career played out when network television still mattered. So it's mostly the biggest games of the 90s are on NBC. And the promos are on Seinfeld and Cosby and ER and Friends and on the Today Show and Johnny Carson and Brokaw's newscast. So it's much more water cooler conversation for the casual fan than LeBron's career that played out on cable. So now when we get to this point, there's still a cable presence, ESPN, ABC, but ABC matters there, and ESPN is more central. It's not at the fringes of cable. It's more classic cable, if that's the way to put it. And there's so many games now on Sunday nights and in the playoffs, right through the Western Conference Finals this year, that will be on NBC with all that production and all that promotion. So that's going to help people like Wembanyama. That's going to help Doncic. LeBron doesn't need the help. That's going to help the young stars in the league, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Jokic is going to become better known, not just to hardcore basketball fans, but to the casual fan. So I think there's going to be an uptick. Is it going to match the 90s? No, the world has changed too much, but it's going to move in that direction.
No, I love that NBC is back with a vengeance like this, Bobby. Like when I was coming up in the business, I had it in my head that I just want to work for network TV. I just want to be on a national network, and I don't even know what it is doing. Like I actually went through a period when I was in college where I would write letters to Dan Rather, and I would write letters to Peter Jennings. I wrote letters to Tom Brokaw. Tom Brokaw was my idol beyond my sports guys, and I just had it in my head, network TV, national TV. And of course, the world's changed so dramatically. I was going to ask you, you were a broadcasting prodigy who was hired by NBC at such a young age. So what do you make of today's generation of broadcasters who have spent their formative years now on camera thanks to Instagram and TikTok and are graduating college and they're really pretty polished already?
Yeah. And a lot of them have had greater access to the work of the broadcasters they admire, no matter what direction that is, whether they admired Jim Nantz or Mike Tirico or Joe Buck, or they admired you or Rich Eisen or Dan Patrick doing what you guys do, or the great studio hosts or the podcasters. So there's a lot of different ways to come at it, but there's so much more ready access to it that if you're really a student of it, you have a lot of material that you can go over.
All right, Bob, so you mentioned, I'm just jumping around now. You mentioned the Olympics.
Yeah.
In 1984, the Los Angeles Summer Olympics, which incidentally I worked. I did work them from Santa Barbara. From Santa Barbara. I was still in school, and I covered the rowing as part of the press. So they were a financial success under Peter Ueberroth and his leadership at that time, right? But that was the height of the Cold War. What is your outlook for the games returning to LA in 2 years?
Well, I think it's going to be a very big deal. That's not exactly an insight, a very big deal in the United States. NBC and all of the spokes off that wheel are going to be all over it. I think people will embrace it. I would imagine that every significant living American summer Olympian of any consequence would be invited there. And that would be my role to kind of lean into the history of that. There are always going to be concerns about security and about logistics as it gets, more and more entangled and concerns rise from various directions. But that's part and parcel of the modern Olympics, and they're going to have to figure out how to handle that.
Right, so Bobby mentioned the Dodgers, the Cardinals, and what might ever happen
Hmm.
should that happen. Turning to baseball, you grew up in New York in an era that coincided with the tail end of the dynastic run by the Yankees and their multiple series wins. So where do you come out on the current dominance of the sport by the Dodgers? Is that a positive or a negative for the sport?
I actually think it's a positive because, and people misunderstood this. People always think if you say something about positive about, especially a big market team, that you're dissing their team. It was better for baseball that Shohei Ohtani landed with the Dodgers, not just because they're building a huge Asian fan base and his presence draws a disproportionate number of excellent Japanese players who want to play not just with the Dodgers, they want to play with him, and now with Yamamoto and others. But it was better for the game that the most fascinating, Aaron Judge is a great, great player, a generational player, an elite someday inner circle Hall of Famer, and people love to watch him. But Ohtani is in a different class, and it was better that he was with the Dodgers than with the Angels. Nothing against the Angels. They've really tried. I mean, you live in Orange County. People love to diss Artie Moreno. He signed Albert Pujols. He signed Josh Hamilton. He re-signed Trout. He signed Anthony Rendon, who all of a sudden decided he didn't want to play baseball. And they tried to hang on to Ohtani, and they came up snake eyes on almost all of that. But you can't. I don't think people are correct when they say he's not trying. But nonetheless, it would have been better, is better, that Ohtani wound up with the Dodgers because he got to the biggest showcase twice in a row. And the Dodgers are always going to be in the playoff mix. But to your question about them dominating, Milwaukee won 97 games last year. They beat the Dodgers 6-0, 6 times out of 6 in the regular season, then got swept in the LCS. And obviously, when the Dodgers pull it all together and get the pitching lined up, they're a better team than the team that settled for 93 wins and won the National League West. The Dodgers are always going to be in the mix. But this setup now, we have two central divisions. That's 10 teams in the two central divisions, Romy. None of those teams, with the exception of the Cubs, is in the top half of baseball payrolls. So that gives teams like the Guardians and the Royals and the Twins, that gives them a chance in those divisions. And there's really no excuse for a team like the Pirates to consistently be bad because, with the exception of the Cubs, no one's going to greatly outspend them in the National League Central. So you have that. And now you have 3 wild cards. So you can get into the playoffs winning 85, 86, 87 games. And once you're in, you've got a crack at it. And think how close the Blue Jays came. Now, they're not a small market team, but how close they came to beating the Dodgers. They did everything but win that World Series. But how close Seattle came to being in the series against the Dodgers instead of Toronto. So are there some teams that are hopelessly languishing, and may that lead to a lockout? We hope not. And if there is a lockout, they'll impose it in December. And so the idea of that is to put pressure on and enough of it that you can settle before you lose any games. And historically, games have only been lost after strikes, not after lockouts. But if there is a lockout, it's because some percentage of the 30 teams feel that this is out of whack. But the Players Association will never go for a salary cap, even though every other major American team sports, North American team sport, has some version of a salary cap. But in baseball, that's a line that the Players Association will never allow you to cross. It's like a holy war rather than just a straight up business negotiation. But they're going to have to find some mechanism that restores a little bit of order to this. But I think when people complain that the Dodgers can punch their ticket on opening day to the World Series in October, that's not really true. Think about the seasons before the last two when the Dodgers won the World Series. They lost to the Padres in 4 games from their own division after finishing 22 games ahead of them. Then they got swept by the Diamondbacks 3 straight the next year from their own division. They'd been 16 games ahead of them. And then in 2024, when they wound up winning the World Series, they were down again to the Padres 2-1 in a best of 5. So once you get into that postseason, you could be the 1927 Yankees. It's a roll of the dice.
Hey, by the way, that you could drop your proverbial microphone right there, because that's extremely well said. And it's the biggest misnomer ever. Like, I've never understood all this outrage against the Dodgers. To your point, Bob, you just laid it all out. I mean, there is no guarantee. All these other teams had such a good look at it. Toronto came this close to getting it done last year. So I don't buy any of that at all, and it's got nothing to do with where I am geographically. But you mentioned the Union. I'm really concerned. I'm really interested in this. Like, you and I are old enough. We remember 1994. We remember the strike that led to the cancellation of the World Series. What about that Union? You know, you go back to the days when Donald Fehr ruled that Union and Marvin Miller before that. Is that Union what it was then? Like, do you feel like they've got a willingness to fight as hard as their predecessors to prevent the owners from imposing a salary cap? Because you know more than ever they are coming for blood this time.
Yeah, and now Tony Clark ran into some difficulties of his own, and he's out. And so that may cause some confusion and may put a crack in a unified front. Nobody who has headed the Players Association ever wanted to be the first one to yield on a salary cap, because it was a principle in their minds that could never be violated. And Marvin Miller pretty much held the players together, and his successors, Don Fehr and Gene Orza, who all of whom were brilliant and honest, even if you disagree with them. They didn't lie. They weren't disingenuous. They were honest. So you didn't catch them in lies, but they were hardcore. They wouldn't yield anything. And because Marvin Miller had told them that the owners will never be straight with you and they're always trying to screw you, and that kind of went through the membership. So even the highest salary players were willing to miss paychecks to protect everyone, the entire membership, and succeeding generations of players. The players historically have all read from that hymnal. They're all singing from the same hymnal that first was laid down by Marvin Miller. Now we'll see whoever winds up, carrying the torch for them in this upcoming negotiation, if that person has any different outlook.
Bob, you mentioned Shohei, so you have always had a profound appreciation for baseball history. I mean, have we reached a point right now? Can we say that Shohei is the greatest player of all time, given his unique skill set, his two-way player status? I mean, is he the best player you've ever seen?
Yeah, that's the case to make for him, because there's nobody like him. Babe Ruth, in a completely different era, was a Hall of Fame level pitcher when he was primarily pitching. And then he became the greatest slugger of his era. But he didn't do both of them simultaneously, and he didn't do both of them against a better talent pool integrated with not just black players, but Hispanic players and players now from Asia. So there's never been anybody like Ohtani, and you can make that case. If you want to make the case that there are contemporaries, including, let's say, Aaron Judge, who have been more productive offensively, and if you want to, allow for differences in generations, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, etc., may have been more productive hitters than Ohtani, but they didn't steal bases like Ohtani did. The one year that Ohtani didn't pitch, that's when he decided to steal 50 and inaugurate the 50-50 club, of which he is not only the only member, but likely to always be the only member. So, when you talk about somebody being unique, unique is a misused word. A lot of times people say it's very unique. Something can't be very unique. It's either unique or it isn't.
It's redundant, right?
Right. And unique is not something that's rare. It's unique. It applies to Ohtani. He is unique. Now, is he as productive a hitter as the post-PEDs Barry Bonds? And Barry Bonds was a great player even before that. Base stealer, Gold Glove outfielder, great player. He doesn't play the field, speaking of Ohtani, did in Japan some, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was a first-rate outfielder if they ever let him do it. But is he as great in that respect as Willie Mays or Ken Griffey Jr. or Roberto Clemente? No. So are there some areas where you could say this guy was better? But there's never been anybody who combined the two most important things, pitching and hitting for power and speed. He's the guy.
So, Bob, alliteration aside, is he unique or is he a unicorn?
He's both. He's both. A unicorn in theory, in mythology, never saw it before. What's that? I never saw that before. It's a unicorn. I'm never going to see it again.
We've never seen
So,
50-50 before, and we'll never see it again
no,
unless he decides to go 60-60.
he's both. And some of the things, the games that he had in the postseason, game 3, I guess, the 18-inning game that Freeman won with a home run. He had 2 doubles, 2 homers, and then they walked him 5 straight times. So he's on base all 9 times. And then earlier in the playoffs, I guess against the Brewers, I'm losing track. But he pitched six
No, you
six
don't,
shutout
Bob.
innings.
You never lose track of anything.
Well, that's not really true anymore. It used to be true. Now and then I had a little roadblock of some kind, stumbling block. But the game where he struck out 12 and allowed 1 or 2 hits, pitched shutout ball, and then also hit 2 home runs or 3 home runs. Might have been 3 in that game. And one of them was over the pavilion, and into the walkway in right center field at Dodger Stadium. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring.
So, but before you go, it's so great. I appreciate you so much. You mentioned Letterman. And
Yeah.
I remember the first time I went on Letterman's show, and that was just so unusual because I came up as in that generation, oh my gosh, David Letterman, he knows who I am. He invited me on his show. And the only reason that happened was back in the day when we tried to get our show cleared in New York, we were unable to do so, but we were able to purchase time and get on at night. And for whatever reason, it synced up with David Letterman's schedule, and he'd be driving home listening to me at night, and he's like, that kid's pretty funny. I should do that. He should come on the show. And I'll never forget the first time I went on. I felt like I was sitting in the electric chair, and I remember very distinctly the directions. Do not comment on how cold the studio is, and whatever you do not physically make contact with David. I'm like, why would I touch David Letterman? And I like a cold studio myself, but you're much closer to it. Do you remember the first time you appeared on his show and what it was like and what it meant to you?
Oh, yeah, I do. And there are similarities in our stories because David, who liked to drive around, I used to have this syndicated radio show on
Yes.
Sunday nights called
Coast to
Coast to
Coast.
Coast
Yes.
from the mid 80s to the mid 90s. This is before Sunday Night Football and Sunday Night Baseball took off. So all the stations, the big 50,000 watt stations that carried sports, didn't have any programming. So they all carried that show. So it was on 300 stations. So Letterman apparently would be just driving around. Dave is an incredible talent, and he was always good to me, but he's kind of an unusual guy. So he'd be driving around and listening on a Sunday night. And he actually said to Dick Ebersol, who ran NBC Sports, hey, if Costas, this is his exact quote, if Costas can make Bart Starr sound interesting, why couldn't he talk to anybody? And that was the seed planted with Ebersol, who then created later for me that followed Letterman at 1:30 in the morning for 6 years on NBC. But to your point, David is a real sports fan. And if he likes somebody, even if the bookers would say, I don't know, why are you booking this guy? He decided who was going to come on. And obviously he liked you. The first time I was on was early in his late night run at NBC, maybe 2-3 months into it in 1982. And he had one of his wacky ideas, and it was elevator races. And so the idea was they picked 2 people from the audience. They gave them fake Olympic torches. They were supposed to run down the hall on the 6th floor, get on the elevator, go down into the lobby, run around the block at 30 Rock, come back in, get back on the elevator, go back upstairs, enter the studio. And whoever got back first was the winner and received glorious prizes. So he wanted someone to commentate on this. And I knew, because I was a fan of his from his appearances on Carson, I knew what he wanted. He wanted this mock reverent thing, as absurd as the premise was. He wanted somebody acting like it was the opening ceremony of the Olympics or overlooking the 18th green at Augusta. So I gave him that
What he
mock
wanted.
serious. I gave him what he wanted, and he liked it. And then he started booking me for other pranks like that, and also just as a guest, like you were as a guest. And it was an incredible thrill. Nothing against Carson. I was only on with Johnny one time. And that was a thrill of a lifetime because he was Johnny Carson, for God's sake. But our generation's guy was really David Letterman. And David Letterman influenced everybody who followed. He influenced Conan. He influenced Fallon. He influenced Jimmy Kimmel. Not Colbert so much, which take nothing away from Colbert. But you can see the Letterman influence in those other guys I just mentioned.
Oh, beautiful. So one last thought. Later was such a great show, Bob. Such a great show. I mean, you could get anybody you wanted. The first your favorite first big get, was it Bruce or was it somebody else?
McCartney, Paul McCartney. And at that time, Paul is very accessible for someone that's beyond iconic. He's in a class virtually of his own in terms of fame and appreciation for the quality of what he did. It's one thing to be famous; it's another thing to earn it through incredible work. And there he is. But now he's much more available. You wouldn't be surprised to see him on Entertainment Tonight talking about something. But then he hadn't done anything on American television in almost 10 years. And one of the things I found out in doing that show is that musicians, actors, ball players, cab drivers, new mothers up nursing their crying babies, they keep odd hours and they watch the show. And so a lot of times, once the show got some traction, people would say, I stayed up and watched it, and that's why I want to be on the show. So McCartney was familiar with the show. He came on, and we did 3 consecutive nights with him, and he could not have been more gracious. And he was respectful enough to give real thoughtful answers, not canned answers, real thoughtful answers to my questions. And a lot of the laters, including those 3 shows, are knocking around on YouTube if people want to check them out.
Thoughtful answers like these, Bob. I'm so appreciative of the friendship. All these years, you've always been so great to me and so accessible. I'm so excited for you and the next chapter. So congratulations on that. I'm really eager to see that. I can't wait to see it. And I can't thank you enough for this, Bob. You are the absolute best. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Always a pleasure. And for once now, we got to make good on our vow. We always end every phone call or every Zoom call. We're going to get together. We even list the places where we could get together in Orange County, and then we don't. Let's make it happen.
What is your schedule? Are we even at liberty to say? I can cut this off right now, but are you at liberty to say what state you're in right now?
Figure it out.
Okay, I got it. Then I will figure that out, and then I will figure the other part out. But in the meantime,
all
Bob,
good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Good to be
Thank
with
you.
you.
You
See
too.
ya.